It's Rob and Brent and my Reggie dude, and don't forget it also features Dawson too. We gonna give you all the dope reviews, but first we'll hit on all the movie news. Cha-ching, cha-ching, box office due. In between the news and the reviews, there's not a lot that we don't do, so turn the volume up, cause we coming through. Put your headphones on and tie your shoes. Jackman and Grant, we got all the views. We're like Brando in Godfather 2. We're gonna make a podcast you can't refuse. This is the Cinema Chat Podcast, and we know a lot about movies. Welcome back to another episode of Cinema Chat Podcast with Rob and Brent and Reggie featuring Dawson. I'm Brent.
I'm Reggie.
And I'm featuring Dawson.
Reggie, you're gonna have to stop humming over the bumpers.
I'm sorry.
because
I can't help it. It slaps.
I mean, I agree with you. Not because I don't like it. Not because I don't love that you appreciate it. It's just that there's this delay with with the song from when you hear it to when it plays, and it makes you sound foolish. So,
am I ahead or am I behind? Because maybe I'll just start. I'll try to get ahead of it.
I think you might be
on time.
I think you might be like a half a second behind, so you might need to get ahead of it. So, but yeah, this is an extra special episode of Cinema Chat Podcast, and by that I mean it is a special episode, but it is also an extra episode. So this is not episode. What are we on this coming week? I believe it'll be 284. So this is not 284. This is 283.5, I guess you would say. And we're going to be reviewing the opening act, written and directed by Steve Byrne. We're going to talk about that movie, but we also interviewed Steve Byrne, spent about a half an hour with him. He was nice enough to come on our podcast and talk to us. So we're going to review this movie. And then if you stick around after the review, we'll have about a 25 to 30 minute interview with the guy who wrote and directed it, starred in his own TBS sitcom, had voted one of the best Comedy Central comedy specials of all time in their Comedian Showdown thing that they did. I didn't pull that out of my ass. It was like literally voted one of the best of all time.
That's a fact.
Yeah, hold on.
That's a fact.
He was such a nice guy, and you'll hear that come through whenever we do the interview later. It was a lot of fun. So at the time that we interviewed it, Reggie hadn't seen the movie yet. Now Reggie's seen it. Now we can do the review of the movie. Guys, is there anything that you want to get out there before we play the trailer for this movie?
Biggest thing for me is that I didn't expect us to have this interview at the end of the show, which we say a couple times. It was confirmed on Twitter today that we're all best friends now. So Steve is a friend of the show, so that means he's friends with all of you too.
Yeah, he's
okay.
He's super
That's nice.
He's a super nice guy. Yeah, dude. Steve's the best. You guys are gonna love Steve by the time this episode's over, and you're gonna want to watch this movie. So let's get on to our feature presentation.
And now, our feature presentation.
The opening act, written and directed by Steve Byrne, starring a lot of comedians, guys. A lot of comedians. Jimmy O. Yang, Alex Moffat, Cedric the Entertainer, Bill Burr's in there, Neil Brennan. You got Debbie Ryan. She's from some Disney Channel shows. Ken Jeong is in here. Whitney Cummings, Tom Segura, Roy Wood Jr. Eliza Schlesinger's on there for a little bit. I feel like I'm forgetting people. I mean, it's jam-packed with comedians. Jermaine Fowler. Pick up some people that I may have missed. Dawson, is there anybody else that you can think of?
Alonzo Bowden.
Alonzo Bowden's in there. From Last Comic Standing fame. You might know him. I believe.
Wait! Don't tell me.
Yeah. Dude, there's so many comedians in this. It's like
Felipe Esparza. He's a comedian.
Yes.
He was a taxi driver.
Mm-hmm.
Russell Peters is a comedian.
oh yeah. He was
Russell Peters.
yeah.
Peters Billingsley is a producer who's also from The Christmas Story. He's the kid from The Christmas Story.
Okay.
Vince Vaughn is a producer.
Before we move any further, we were talking after the interview, and Steve mentioned that Peter Billingsley was the producer. And afterwards, I was like, "Do you guys know who Peter Billingsley is?" And Dawson's like, "What'd you say, Dawson?" Whenever I said that,
I was like, "You think I would have been like, if he would have loved it if I would have been like, hey, Steve, is that the same Peter Billingsley from Christmas Story? Is he good? Is he still sticking tongues at poles?" And then we just went on a raid for 20 minutes, and Reggie just looked at us, just kept asking the same question over and over again, and.
Yeah, we were talking about dumb questions that we could have asked him, and they all started with, hey Steve. And we literally did that for 20 minutes, and Dawson and I were falling out of our chairs. And I think at one point, Reggie, you just said, "What is going on? Like, what is happening here?"
And unfortunately, I feel like you didn't catch a lot of those. I think you stopped the recording.
Yeah, I'd already stopped the recording for most of them. But yeah, so if I can find some, there might be some at the end of this episode. But unfortunately, I think the best of it hit the proverbial cutting room floor, not the actual cutting room floor, the Patreon show, patreon.com/cinemachatpodcast, but the actual cutting room floor, because they never got recorded. But yeah, so that's the cast. It's a humongous cast, chock full of wonderful comedians. As we said, the director and writer himself, Steve Byrne, is a fantastic comedian along with it. But this story, basically, the plot of the movie basically follows a comedian from like his first big gig, his break into the scene, the comedy scene, like proper, not open mic. His first booked gig where he goes on the road, and it sort of follows him through that first weekend that he does that. And Jimmy O Yang plays the lead character. And I think it's not a stretch to say this is loosely based on the experiences of Steve Byrne as a young stand-up comedian. So it's basically the gist of the story. It's a very simple story. There's not a lot of craziness that goes into like intricate plot or character development. It's just this guy's getting started on his career, and we're going to follow him, and we're going to see what it's like to try to break in as a stand-up comedian. So yeah, very personal story for Steve. And Dawson, you were the first one that found this movie. How did you find it? Because I hadn't heard of it.
I mean, yeah, so I follow a lot of stand-up comedians on Twitter, and last week when this movie came out, a lot of them started retweeting it or liking it, saying, "You got to check this out." So I watched the trailer, and I got really interested in it. I'm like, you know what? I'll add this to the list. I had a little bit of a slow day on Friday or Thursday, was it? And I was like, you know what? It's a $7 rental on Amazon. I'll do that instead of a $20 or $30 rental. And I fell in love like right away. So I was hooked 5 minutes in, and it's an hour and a half long, and it's definitely worth it. Yeah, it's really good.
And I saw you tweet about it. You tweeted out basically the contents of your tweet were, "Hey, I watched this movie, the opening act. It was done by Steve Byrne. You did a great job. I loved it. I'm going to be talking about it on Cinema Chat Podcast tonight." And
well, then I get a reply, and I'm like, "Oh, it's Brent or Reggie or Jonathan saying that movie looks dumb." And it was the director of the movie, and he's like, "I can hang out tonight if you guys want to hang out for a half hour before the debate." And I'm like, "Okay, let's do that."
So I hadn't seen it yet, and I get a text from Dawson. He's like, "Hey, would you want to interview a stand-up comedian / director?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely, 100%, I would." So the debate came on at 9:00 Eastern time. And we start recording at 9:15. So we moved up the recording 45 minutes to get Steve on and talk to him before the show that we were recording. Well worth adjusting our schedules to make time for him. You know, we talked about him making time for us. We didn't talk about the time that we made for Steve.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I shifted my night around for that man.
It could have been a power move, and I'm like, you know what? That doesn't really work for us. How about you come back at a day when it works for us?
It was also really embarrassing whenever he asked us, like, he's like, just give him the details about the show. And I was like, yeah, we record on Skype. Unfortunately, we don't have like a phone number that you can call. So if you have a Skype account, that would be good. And, we've never really done an interview. So I just threw that out there because I was like, but whenever he gets on here, he's going to know that we don't interview people because we don't know what the fuck we're doing. But yeah, super nice to get him on the show. But, I found out the movie through Dawson.
But I'll say, don't let Brent saying that think this is a bad interview, because we had a lot of fun.
Dude.
He had a lot of fun. And I think he ended up staying longer than he told us he was going to stay. So he cut it down to like 20 minutes, and then he stayed later. So he was having fun. That's a good sign to me.
I had a ton of fun on that interview. I really did. So stick around for that for sure. But I found out about the movie through Dawson. Steve was going to be on. So that afternoon rented the movie, watched it myself so that I could talk about it with him. And then Reggie sat down, talked with Steve, listened to us talk about the movie, and he's like, I've got to watch this now. So he watched it, and here we are. Reggie, we've kind of know how we feel about the movie, and I think judging by how like amped up we are talking about it, I think people can kind of tell that Dawson and I really enjoyed the movie. What are your opening thoughts about this film?
Shoot. Like I really, after talking with Steve and hearing you guys talk about it, I kind of knew what I was getting into, but even still, it was a very fun movie and very fun watch. As somebody who, like, I don't follow like comics on Twitter or whatever, but like I watch a lot of YouTube clips of comedy and stuff like that because like I like stand up. I know like there's a running joke that I hate comedy and I don't. Well, I'm not a big fan of comedy movies, I should say. Let's but like I do like stand up comedy, So watching that from that point of view was really fun to watch, and then to see what it's like to be a comic. It was very fascinating to me. So like it was a nice watch. I don't think I loved it quite as much as you guys did, but like I did. I think you learn a lot, and I especially liked how there was kind of comedians in the movie on almost every rung of comedy. Like you have him starting out, but then you have Cedric Entertainer's kind of like at the top. Not necessarily on the top of the game, but he had his heyday.
He's like the elder.
See what happens.
The elder statesman, sort of, yeah.
Right. And then, and then of course you had I guess the guy you call his friend in it that was kind of, still making his way, but like I want to call him a burnout per se, but is like, he's middle rung, I guess. So it was like you got to see different people throughout the different parts of their career in comedy. So that was a lot of fun. And then I really liked the personal aspect of it, because it was about, his journey, but then also what it meant to him and his father and stuff like that. And I found it to be very interesting.
Yeah, you talked about his experiences with his family and his father, and he has his girlfriend in this. He quits his job, all this stuff. Dawson, you talked a little bit about the opening of the movie, and the first few minutes of the movie, there's no dialogue. It's all a story told through imagery, and I'm not gonna give away what it is, but it sets the tone for sort of what the movie is about. But it's probably the deepest thing in the entire movie. Yeah, is the opening scene, And it really does
Mhm.
set the tone for the rest of the movie. It lets you know that, hey, this is a comedy and there's going to be jokes and you're going to laugh, but there's also like a serious, I wouldn't say character study, but there's serious moments in this movie, and we're trying to tell a real story here, and we're not here just, we're going to make you laugh, but we're not here just to make you laugh. And I liked setting that tone very, very early on in the movie. I think it was a good choice for sure. But
Yeah, it hits hard. I'll say that. So it's not sunshine or rainbows. It's a tough watch, but it's good, and enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. So you've got, like we said, you got a ton of comedians in here. You've got Jimmy O Yang as the lead in the film. I don't know if you guys ever watched his stand-up. I know I was first introduced to him in Silicon Valley. He had kind of a smaller role in that show. He was really funny in that. And then after that show was over, I sort of started to saw his stand-up. And gosh, he is a funny guy. He's really, really funny. And to watch him play a struggling comedian, it's tough to watch. It's hard to watch people fail at anything. But whenever you're watching someone try to be funny and they're getting no reaction from the audience, or a negative reaction in some cases, it's hard to watch. But seeing someone that's an accomplished comedian sort of probably relive the early days of their career, I don't know if that, I almost wonder if that sort of churned up feelings for him, or I'm sure it gave him something to play off of. I'm sure that every comedian knows what that feels like, right? So he had real life experiences to draw on. I thought that he did a really good job of sort of placing the disappointment on his face whenever he fails, because he has some really great reactions, not only while he's in the midst of bombing, but whenever he gets backstage and he just looks dejected. I've never really seen Jimmy O Yang act all that much. I mean, he was in that Fantasy Island movie, so I guess I saw him in that. But I've never seen him.
Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah, but I've never seen him do something kind of serious, right? Everything I've seen's sort of been over the top Jimmy O Yang, or a character, in Silicon Valley. He's very much a character. And to see him play a real, someone that seemed like his real personality, sort of, I thought seeing him act in that way, and maybe it's the case, Reggie, we talked about this before, where you have someone that takes on a dramatic-ish role, and they do really well in it, but maybe they're sort of playing themselves a little bit. I think it probably does make it a little easier, but I'm not going to take anything away from the performance he gives, because I think that he does some really great stuff in this movie. And I'm going to keep coming back to it, because it's like there's several times in this movie where they tell the story through facial expressions. There's not a ton of dialogue that's not tied up in the comedy, in the stand-up. So you get a lot of the story told through reactions, and I think that everyone on screen does a pretty good job of their reactions, but I think Jimmy O Yang probably does the best job out of all of them, in my opinion. I just talked a lot, so I need you guys to...
You did.
I was trying to process what you were saying. Like, I agree. Like, there is a lot of facial expressions, which does help and stuff. But like, I do think that a lot of the dialogue, I don't know. Like, I think I would push back that a lot of the dialogue is tied in to the stand-up, because I don't think it is. Like, there's a lot of talking about stand-up and talking about, like the Russell Peters scene where they're at the radio. Like, I felt
fair.
like
That's
that
fair.
was...
That's fair. You're probably right. You're right about that.
Yeah. And then, like, there's a lot of really great stuff in the movie that, like his whole relationship with his girlfriend. Like, I'm glad they didn't... I feel like it would have been such an easy trope for him to be like, oh, and then he cheats on his girlfriend or whatever, and then that causes some sort of drama. But like that, the fact that that never happened, I thought was pretty cool, you know, because I think most movies would have done something like that to try and have some sort of tension or something.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because it's almost whenever you see the girlfriend as a piece of the story, inherently you expect that girlfriend to play a part in whatever drama is caused in his life, whether she's upset that he's quit his job or she's upset that he's maybe they had a trip planned and he's canceling the trip to go away for the weekend. Like usually they find some way to bring the girlfriend into the conflict. Like that's sort of why the significant other is there in the story, is to provide conflict. And them having, not only having the significant other there, but she was probably his biggest supporter and the one pushing him to move towards his dreams. It's sort of the antithesis of what you would expect whenever you have a story that brings that person in.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting. I had that thought. I was like, oh, so what's going to happen with the girlfriend later? And then it never happens. Like, so that was, I'm glad you brought that up because that's something I did think about, but I probably wouldn't have brought it up. So, let's see. Cedric the Entertainer, what's up with that hair?
I mean, it's got to be, it's just a show hair, right? Because he's wearing a hat the rest of the time.
Yeah.
That was some crazy hair for sure. But yeah. Bill Burr, what's up with that hair? No.
Hey, Brent.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the story?
What did I think of the story? I thought it was really neat to watch, like someone who really wants to make something work, something they dreamed about growing up. No, I mean it's every story that you hear about someone following something they're passionate about, right? They have something that they really want, and they do what they need to do to sort of make that dream become a reality. And I have to be honest with you, I would love to say that story resonates with me, but I've never had that one thing that I was super passionate about that I'm like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. You know, what do you want to be whenever you grow up? I feel like I never really answered that question. Like I love being a dad and having kids and all of that stuff, but professionally or artistically or like a passion project kind of thing, I feel like I never really found that. Is that so while the story is nice and I love seeing someone else get that, I don't feel like I ever had anything like that. What about you guys?
I mean, not that I've gone to the point where I quit my job to chase after.
But, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had a bucket list item of doing a stand-up comedy set at one point in my life. But I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't know that I could ever work it up.
Is it because you're afraid?
I don't know. I
didn't mean to get deep here, but you know.
No, I think for me, I just don't know that I could put together like 5 minutes of good jokes because I think I'm funnier as responding and in the moment, not necessarily like, hey, check out this joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know, but yeah.
What about you, Reggie?
Yeah.
Not really. Like, I don't know. Like, I have never really like had a calling, I guess you would say, like, or anything like that. Like everything that I guess I've wanted to do, I've set out to do. Like, well, yeah, goals, but like I'll set my goals and then try and like work at it. But like aside from that, like there's nothing where I've been like, oh man, I will quit my job and everything to try and do this. And I guess it's a lot of it has to do with the fact just I don't think that's the type of person I am. Like I'm very much I don't know, like I need security, if that makes sense. So like the idea of doing something like that just kind of seems a bit foreign to me.
Yeah. I mean, like, I would say for me, the closest thing that I have to that is, like, I've always wanted, similar to Dawson's, like, 5 minutes of stand up, like, I've always wanted to write a movie script. And I've, a couple of times in my life, started on a script, and then I'll get part of the way through it, and I'll have, like, a writer's block. And I'll say, you know, I'm going to stop for now, and I'll come back to it. Guess what? I've never gone back to either of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's the closest thing I have, but yeah, but no.
Well, you know, kind of, I guess along those lines, like I've always wanted to like hike the whole Appalachian Trail. So I guess like that's really one of the, I guess the only like giant goal that I have. Like I've always, I guess like a lot of my goals I've had, I guess I've like actually tried to do. Like for instance, starting a podcast. You know,
Yeah.
it's like I could do that, so I did it. You know, I don't know if that's a boring answer, but
Well, you know, no, it's not. It's not, because it took me a long time to start this podcast, right? Like, I listened to Kevin Smith's Smodcast. It was the first podcast I ever heard. First one I ever listened to. Back on my Zune.
Soon.
You know, before people really even kind of understood what podcasts were. You know, there were only a handful of podcasts whenever that came out. And the first time I listened to it, he was just sitting down and talking with his best friend, right? And I was like, man, like, I want to do that. And that was, gosh, I don't know, 2007, probably. And we started this podcast in 2015. So it took me 8 years to get up the nerve to actually start one. So I don't think that's a stupid answer. And if I'm being honest with myself, I would probably say that that's the closest thing I have to following a dream. But it kind of feels hollow to me in a way, because the bar is so low, like anyone can start it. I guess that's a bad way to look at it, probably.
I would, yeah, anybody can start it, but like the average length of a series of a podcast is like 3 episodes. So when you're creeping up on 100 times that, like, it's not just anyone can do it. Yeah, sure, anybody can do it, but not everyone sticks to it.
Yeah.
So not everyone has wonderful patrons that pay money to listen to their podcast.
Exactly.
So I mean, there's that side of it too. Do we have a ton? Are we making Joe Rogan money? No.
Not yet.
But we're having fun. We get to hang out with our friends. We get to talk about things we're passionate about, and have a good time. So,
well, you know what we should talk about? We should talk about this movie for just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Instead of me taking this up on a 10-minute diatribe about what we haven't done or have done in our lives. I loved all of the comedians in this. I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy. So seeing a movie that's littered with stand-up comedians, like, there's a couple that I would like to see in there that aren't in there. One of them being Bert Kreischer, who he mentioned in his interview with us. But you know, you can't really complain whenever you get this amount of talent in there. I would love to see, one of the Impractical Jokers pop up in there or something. But yeah, there's a huge list of people that are in this film, and they're all really good, and it's a really great story about someone chasing their dream, and not only do you get to see them chase that dream, you get to see what it's really like at the beginning. You get to see them fail and persevere, and perseverance is when you see someone overcome failure, that is a feel-good thing. And I really enjoyed watching something that made me feel good about the people, the characters in the story, especially right now when there's not a lot going on in the world that really feels all that great, I guess. So it was a welcomed film at the right time for me, and it's a bonus that the writer and director is just such a just a wonderful human being. It seems.
Yeah,
my new best friend.
he made fans out of all of us. I'll say this too. Like I watched a show on HBO. It's very, very similar to this movie. It's called Crashing. It stars another stand-up comedian, and there's comedians everywhere through it. So I'll say if you watch this movie and like it, and you haven't seen that, watch that. It's 3 seasons. It's great. It's this, but 3 seasons, and it's really drawn out longer, half-hour episodes. But phenomenal TV show. If you like this movie, you'll love that. You'll love that show. So good stuff. Yeah, I mean it's great. I mean I loved it. I'm really high on it. I'm telling everybody I know to watch it, especially if I know they like stand up, which a lot of people I know do. So it's like it's a good startup.
All right. Do we want to get to our scores? Do we want to let Reggie give his score first?
Okay, yeah, we can do that. I really enjoyed the movie. I'm glad I watched it. Like, there's a lot of things about stand-up that I always wonder what it's like in that world, right? Because like I listen to a lot of podcasts with comedians on it and stuff, you know, especially like Earwolf's podcast, tons of comedians on there and stand-ups. But like, it's interesting to see what that world is like from, you know, top level to kind of bottom, you know, from people starting out to people who've been in it forever. And then even like those the things at the end, in the I guess the epilogue, you know, was kind of interesting to hear all these comedians talk about their experiences in the comedy world. So like it was a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to sit down and watch it and talk about it. I wish I had, you know, been there. I wish I had known what it was when we got the interview, but I still had a lot of fun with it. And I would give it a 8 out of 10.
Okay, all right. I'll go next. I'll let you go last, Dawson. I gave a different score whenever we interviewed Steve, mostly as a joke, but I absolutely love this movie. It's the content of it is right up my alley, and I don't know if this is like if it's because the movie came at the right time. Quite frankly, I don't really care why I love it so much. I just do. It's just a great story. It follows some great characters, and like Reggie said, like you get to see a lot of different kinds of comedians at different stages in their careers and how they sort of interact with each other. It felt very personal. It felt very real. And I love getting that peek behind the curtain of this thing that I love so much. So thank you, Steve Byrne, for that. And I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Dawson?
Excellent. Yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, this is part of the reason why I like a movie like Ready to Rumble. No, I like Ready to Rumble because it is the same type of thing. It's a peek behind a curtain, but I stopped myself because I don't want you to compare these two movies. They're opposite ends of the spectrum. I love this movie. I love stand-up comedy. I like seeing these guys' story because once you get into it, you think like, oh yeah, you're funny, and then you just take off. That's never the case, and you should understand that if you want to be a stand-up comedian. Like, you're gonna fail, you're gonna struggle. But yeah, I mean, I love this movie. I'm high on it. I'm just like Brent said. I'm giving it a 9. Go watch it. You got to see it. You'll enjoy it.
All right. So an 8 and 2 9s. Like I said, we've got an interview with Steve Byrne coming up. It's about 25 to 30 minutes. I hope you enjoy that as much as we did. I think that you will. And just one last time before we go to that interview, I want to take a second to thank Steve for coming on the show because it was really great. Had a great time. And if you get a chance, go watch this movie. If Steve comes to your town, go see him live. Follow him on Twitter. Dawson, I can't remember.
I think it's just Steve Byrne Live.
Steve Byrne Live, maybe?
Byrne. Byrne.
Yeah, Byrne, Byrne, not Burn. So, yeah, follow him, watch the movie. He's got a documentary on what how did I almost call that Wetflix? That's a different website, I'm sure of it.
It's on YouTube, I believe, called The Amazing Anthony. It's a documentary about his buddy who's a magician in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So apparently it's really, really good. When I was doing a little research before our interview, I kept seeing everybody rave about it. So if you like documentaries, check that out too.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching it soon. So check all that stuff out. Stay tuned for our interview with Steve. Thanks for listening to our review. We'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
I grew up in Pittsburgh, and people slag Cleveland a lot, but I actually have a lot of respect for Cleveland. I think it's very similar to Pittsburgh. It's like the brother that it's the little brother, right?
Yeah.
And the older brother gets to play with Batman. The little brother always gets Robin. It's like, but I want Batman. It's like, you're the little brother. Shut up.
Right. Well, and I'm in Minneapolis, so I'm in flyover country USA. So
there you go. My wife's from Minnesota too, so nice.
What part?
She grew up in Winona.
Okay.
And went to Mankato State. And I met a guy a few years ago. I'll never forget this conversation. I said, "Oh, my wife's from Minnesota." He goes, "Oh yeah, where's she from?" I go Winona. She went to Mankato State. He goes, "Oh my God, we used to party hard at Mankato State." I'm like, "Oh, it's good to hear." He goes, No, we used to go to Mankato State just to get laid." I'm like, "Okay, dude." And he goes, "What's your wife's name?" I'm like, "You better leave me alone."
Exactly. I was going to say, as soon as you said Mankato, I'm like, oh man, it's either going to be Adam Thielen, the wide receiver for the Vikings, was a Mankato, or that it's a party town. And I was a St. Cloud person, so I understand the small town party college. Well, yeah. So thank you for joining us here.
Thanks.
I know we're going to keep it shortish because of the debates tonight. And I saw the trailer for the movie, and I thought it looked amazing, and I watched it today, and I tweeted, and I honestly didn't expect anyone to respond. I didn't expect you to respond back and say, "Hey, let's hang out tonight." So thank you for that. That's really cool. And I know Brent here, he loves stand-up too. I was like, you got to check this movie out. He rented it and watched it, and I think we're both really high on it. Reggie hasn't had a chance to see it yet, but we're doing a show right after this, so he might just hang out with us. And yeah, so.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, Reg,
so if you're
thanks for being here. I would feel like I'm the diversity hire, but it's good to see that we are bringing up the back end now.
We're diverse. Our other co-host,
yeah, we are diverse.
Our
other co-host is
he's
Latino.
He's Latino, so he's not here tonight.
Yeah.
But we keep
otherwise, you guys would have to wrap this up and go push over a statue with Reggie when this is done. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I got the cables.
We'll work through it. We'll work through it. But yeah, we're really thankful that you decided to join us today. Like Dawson said, he watched the movie. He was really high on it. He told me about it. I somehow hadn't heard of it up until this point, and I know it came out last week, maybe. But I watched it, and it feels like a love letter to stand-up comedy, right? It feels very personal to you. I think that's probably a safe thing to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything that happened in the film, once Will, the character of Will, hits the road, all those things have happened to me. So I was Will. I certainly was Chris Palmer for a few years, and then I got my act together, and I became Billy G, and I'm certainly Billy G now at this point in my life. But, I got kicked off a radio station in Los Angeles. I ended up underneath a trailer while a couple above me had sex, and I couldn't leave because I fear I would get shot. Yes, all those things did really happen to me. And I think that's why casting this with so many of my friends was easy, because even though that trailer incident was mine, every comic I know has had an incident like that. Not maybe that specifically, but something along those lines. So, it's been great to hear the response from critics and from people, but for me to know that like Tom Segura, Bill Byrne, Neil Brennan, who are, as I guess you would assume, very blunt, they each called or texted me the same three things after they saw it. They said, "I loved it. It was so real. And you just re-triggered all these horrible memories from the first year or two. I can't wait to see my therapist on Monday." So that was that was like a badge of honor for me.
And I'll say two things right off the bat. One, congratulations. You took over the place for like the most heartbreaking opening of a movie from Up, the Disney's Pixar Up, that I've ever seen. That opening was so hard to watch, and it was like, man, this is going to be an amazing movie, right? I knew within the first 5 minutes, I was like, I'm in. This is amazing. So thank you for that opening. It was heartbreaking, and I loved every minute about it. So is that personal, or is that just kind of building the character story?
That was building the character story, but because there's some semblance of reality in it, because I have all my cousins on my Korean side learned English from watching television, and a lot of Asians I know, especially Koreans, knowing that a lot of their family members learned because their parents came over, so we're first generation, and learned from TV. And then my father, my brother, and I, when we were younger, we would watch A&E's Evening at the Improv, Caroline's Comedy Hour. We watched Gallagher all the time. My dad let me watch Dangerfield Young Comedian specials. I remember distinctly seeing Kinnison and being like scared as a little kid, like, what's going on? This dude's crazy. And then even like watching guys like Bob Nelson on those Dangerfield specials, and then years later being a young comic in New York City and opening for Bob Nelson, and just seeing that trajectory and knowing that this was a guy that I idolized and couldn't wait to work with. And then we're working at some roadside like Holiday Inn one nighter at Bananas in Newark, and you see a guy like that, and you're just like, wow, this is the ups and downs of it all, right? And at a very young age, I just saw that we're all stocks in comedy. We go up, we go down. Very few are the ones that keep slow and steady and are plateaued. But yeah, it's that was kind of the inspiration for the opening, was father and son bonding, not over football or baseball, but stand-up comedy.
Absolutely, yeah. And go ahead, Brent. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, one of my favorite things about movies is the ability to tell a story through what you see instead of the dialogue. I love dialogue. I love jokes. They're great. But there's something really powerful about being able to convey a message without saying anything. I thought the opening really did that very well. So like Dawson said, I thought it was fantastic. Like, really set the tone for what turned out to be a very funny movie, but it set the tone telling you like, this is something more than shits and giggles all the way throughout. So.
Well, I appreciate, and it's funny you mentioned that, because when you said something like that, it reminded me of a scene. And Reggie, just real quick, can we lose the attitude with everything you're throwing at me? I just want to have a good time tonight.
Yeah, go get your brother. He knows Steve. He's a fan. Bring him in.
Where Will and Chris are doing a shot before his set on Friday, I think it is. Cedric's there. He walks in. He sees them do a shot, and there was an actual dialogue that we had between them. And when we were in the edit bay, Vince says, "Get rid of it. You don't need it, because look at that look that Cedric gives him." He said, "You get everything communicated in that look." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And then you go to the diner scene the next day, you know exactly what it's all about. So yeah, it's funny you bring that up. Yeah,
show don't tell, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And our movie podcast, I'm sure you're a big fan. We're not like a traditional critic. We're just fans of movies. We love movies. We've seen, Brent saw 90 movies in the movie theater last year. And so we watch a lot of movies. We hang out, and I'll say, and I'm not doing it because you're here, but this is legit one of my favorite movies I've seen probably in the last 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it's great. I on our score, we'll do a more deep dive of a review, but I'll give it a 9 out of 10. And that's not just because you're here. I truly loved it. I watched Pete Holmes' show Crashing on HBO, and I loved that show, and I wanted more of that. And that's what I got, was a different perspective. And I just love seeing these stories. I
love Pete, because Pete and I started in New York, as did so many of the comics. We're of this certain generation. But when I saw the show, it's like you meet Sarah Silverman. She's like, "Hey, just come crash on my couch." It's like, wait, well, what's going on here? That's never happened. And I understand why they do it. I totally get it for narrative purposes and getting the comics involved. But I think that our film is more of a realistic representation, where you could meet a headliner and they don't want anything to do with you, because they're so used to being on the road, and they're not conducive to answering for the 1,000th time, "How did you get started?" which every young comic asks. So I think, Cedric's arc is more realistic, where they kind of don't want to do anything to do with you. And then there's this spark, there's this little semblance of somebody doing something on stage, or the crowd laughing so hard that they got to open the door and go, "What's going on here? Oh, there's some talent there." And then all of a sudden the door's open.
Yeah. And it's the storytelling that we get in in a sports movie or any of these biopics. It's just that it's a good feel. It's a really good feel, and right now a lot of us need that. So again, like I'm going to tell everybody that I know they have to rent this movie.
Well,
So,
I appreciate it. And can we let Reginald know that Cedric's in it? So there is a black character. So, Reg, this film is for you too, man. It's not just for the white.
I was wondering when you said
The backward
Cedric, I
hat
was like,
white guy.
Cedric the Entertainer? Cedric?
yeah, and he's phenomenal in it. He's great.
He's one of my
He's great
favorites.
in it.
So.
He's got great
Yeah.
hair in it.
Here's
I'll tell
this
you
one.
that.
Shifts quite a bit. Jermaine Fowler is fantastic. And I think right after that is when he got Coming to America too. So very happy to have worked with him, and just obviously he's a great comic and a fantastic actor, but can't wait to see that movie.
Dawson mentioned it being a feel-good movie, and it is a feel-good movie, but I will tell you, there is almost nothing more painful than watching someone try to be funny and bomb on stage. It's
I do it every week.
It's very uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
And I have to believe, for someone as talented and as funny as Jimmy O Yang, is that difficult to pretend bomb? Or
so in the course of the film, when we were doing it, we shot all the audience shots in one day on a Saturday at the Brea Improv. So we had an actual live audience there that we shifted. We had a morning shift audience, kind of a daytime shift audience, and then a nighttime shift audience. And when we're doing the scenes, I never prepped the audience. I never said, hey, laugh real loud at this. I just said, let's just do the material and get natural reactions. And so when I said to Jimmy on certain scenes when he wasn't doing so well, I said, let's go back to early in your notebooks and find some jokes that never did well and just do those jokes. And so he did and executed them. And so I think what you're seeing is not only a natural reaction, but you're seeing it in a natural environment, because a lot of the films, and I'm a huge fan of The Big Sick. I love that movie. And it's not really a stand-up film. It's a film about a relationship. But that's the stand-up comedy club that he was performing in. I was like, is that a bar that has comedy on the weekend? It never felt like a comedy club. I never got the aesthetics of it all. So I wanted it to feel authentic and real in a real environment as well.
And where were those scenes? Did you just shoot the exterior of the Improv, or where was everything shot in the Improv?
It's funny, our production roped around the fact that it was the Brea Improv. So you get tax incentives if you film within this 30-mile bubble in Los Angeles. And it's called 30-mile zone. And
TMZ. Yeah.
The Brea Improv was, TMZ is named after, right?
Yeah.
So they have the Brea Improv was 29.6 miles within that zone. So we got tax incentives. And I called Robert Hartman, the principal owner of all the improvs, and said, hey, could we film at the Brea Improv? He said, you can not only film at the Brea Improv, you can have the Brea Improv, because we're moving locations literally a block away to a new space. So our whole production ramped up around the fact that was available in July, and we just hit the ground running with it.
Wow, how fortuitous.
Otherwise, we're going to have to film from 3 a.m. until 3 p.m, which would have been awful.
Yeah, absolutely terrible, right?
Yeah.
The cast.
Yeah.
The cast is
it's
amazing.
It's great. I just love seeing everybody pop up, and then you mentioned the trailer scene, and I hear Tom's voice, and I'm like, I think that's Tommy Buns, and then he comes around later on. I'm like, there he is. That was Tom. It's the best.
It's literally like when we're casting, Vince is like, who should we get? I'm like, who looks like a skanky cop? Hey, Score.
We do just a really quick. We do a bit on our show where I do a lot of research and facts on my database. So I pull up facts and trivia from IMDb. I looked at this one, and it's all Tom Segura. So I guess Tom had a lot to do with this movie. I don't know. Do you, as a director or actor, do you ever go in and look at those trivia facts and see how much is real or fake?
I've never looked at it. I don't look at it. The Wikipedia page I have, my old manager did it. I just don't know. And I hear things all the time, and somebody's like, yeah, do you really like? I'm like, yeah, sure. Is that what it says? Okay, yeah. But I know that his fans have hijacked that page to shit on Bert Kreischer, which I gladly will accept.
The first one is like, this is a movie in memory of a stand-up comedian, Burnt Chrysler or Crystals, Burnt Crystals. And as soon as I thought of that, I knew the rest was gonna be pretty fun. Like it was all Tommy Bun stuff.
He would have been in the film. I called Bert first because we started in New York City together, and I left him a message, call me back as soon as possible. And I basically was going to cast him as the cop. And his outgoing voicemail says, hey, I'm out of the country. So because this is independent, we're running and gunning. I go back to the producers. Hey, Bert's not available. I think he's out of the country unless we hear from him in the next 24 hours. They say, give it a day. The next day I text him, hey, can I get Segura's number? Segura calls me back. I go, hey, can you do this film? Segura gets in it. Bert's like, what the heck? Why didn't you cast me? It's like, well, you should have answered my call. And for years, for like a year and a half, he thought that I blew him off. And then I found an email that I sent to Peter Billingsley and Vince Vaughn, and I forwarded it to Bert Kreischer on the air on his podcast. He saw it, and I said, "Do you finally admit that I'm telling the truth?" And you believe me? He's like, "I believe you now." Yeah,
That's
fantastic.
And it's just like, it's cool to see all of you guys comedians having fun together, and it's you're making good content, and it's fun, and it's adapting, and it's cool to see that. We were talking before this, like Brent hadn't seen the trailer for this. I just saw the trailer for it last week, and here we are. We just watched it today, so I didn't see anything about it. Was this planned to come straight to VOD, or was it going to hit the theaters?
we were planning on going to, this is the story I tell, right? So when the film was in editing, I bought myself a nice gift. I was like, I'm going to buy myself a streamlined tailored tuxedo. So I had a tailor come over. He measured me, got this gorgeous tuxedo. I got my wife a gorgeous dress. I said, honey, we're going to wear this when the film premieres. She said, great, I'm excited. And then last Friday, I pulled them both out. I said, honey, we're going to wear this in the living room when the film premieres. So we did have grander ambitions, a comedy festival, movie festival, select theaters, all that stuff, and see if we could build out from there. And unfortunately, COVID happened, but it's also at a time when there's not many comedies coming out lately.
That's true.
Because Hollywood is scared to do comedies because they don't want to offend anybody. And also during this quarantine, there just wasn't many comedies being made. So ours was ready and prepared. And we just thought, you know what? If people are stuck at home, let's do it now. And we just pulled the trigger. And so it is what it is. But the response has been great. And that's, you just never know when you release these things. You're like, I think we did it right. We did some screenings and we think it's good. So let's see what happens. I was proud of it either way.
You talk about the response and say whatever you want about Rotten Tomatoes. Some people love it, some people hate it. I saw that it has a fairly decent critic score. We kind of hate critics around here, but seeing that audience score in the 90 to 95% range has to make you feel good, even with, I think it was 80 something reviews. Like, people are obviously enjoying it. So that's got to be a good sign in the right direction for a movie coming out during quarantine, a comedy. I don't know if everyone is ready to laugh. I'm certainly ready to laugh. This was a breath of fresh air for me, for sure.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was something that, when you, again, I remember it's like the reviews started coming in and they were overwhelmingly positive, and Vince and Pete were especially proud and excited about that, knowing that, hey, we're off to a good start here. Because again, you just never know. And to know that my film did better than Peter Billingsley's film, I feel really, really good about that.
That's awesome. That's good. Well, I know we have the debate tonight. I know we're talking like 20 minutes or so. Guys, I don't want to keep you any longer.
No, do one last round if you want to do.
Okay. Brent, do you have any other questions that popped up?
You know what I'd like to do, Dawson? I would like to hit him with lightning round if we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't pull that up. Sorry.
Do you have that? You don't have that prepared?
Reginald's got to ask me one question. If it's personal, I don't care what it is, but I got to.
Well, it's just I just found out about the film today, so I didn't get a chance to watch it because I was at work or whatnot. But since we brought up COVID, I was just wondering, like, how's the industry now with COVID? Because I know a lot of I follow a lot of people, like comics on Twitter and stuff, and it's just a lot of people are like, it sucks that we can't do anything. And you see a lot of people doing Twitter Instagram shows or Twitter shows, things like that, and streaming. And it's just is a movie like this, do you think it gets a new release when we're all back to normal? Or
I don't think so. I think once it's out there, it's kind of out there, and you hope to God lives a life of its own. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, those virtual shows are not as fun as you would think. Drive-in shows are just a different beast. Again, it's just shifting different gears and different muscles. I think people think when you're a comedian, you just are funny. It's like Well, roasting is a different muscle. Doing morning radio, as you saw in the film, is a totally different muscle. So doing a drive-in movie theater is a completely different muscle that comics like Nate Bargatze and Nikki Glazer and Bert Kreischer are learning and adapting to and becoming really great at it. So that only makes them better performers. But again, there's only certain comics that can kind of do something like that. You gotta be able to draw in a theater to be able to draw on the road in a drive-in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Dawson, do we have those questions ready?
Yep. Okay,
real quick, another question.
Yes, go ahead. Rich.
Two questions? Get out of here.
2 questions. I was just
it.
wondering, like, is it easier for like independent film to get out there? Because like I just feel like I think with so much technology now and like all these streaming services that it's easier for independent producers and content providers to put things out there. I was just wondering, like, is that gatekeeping still there, or is it easier to do?
I think it's easier to do. I think there's so many satellite independent like film festivals you can garner some traction from. The cost of, for example, I did a documentary before this film called Always Amazing about my good friend, the amazing Jonathan. And I did that. I've never made a film before. I never edited a film before, but because the technology is so good right here on this laptop, we were able to do it in my garage and pump that out and get it out there. And it's close to 1 million views. And that documentary enabled the producers to go to investors and say, look what this last film did. And they felt a lot more confident. So I think because I took the onus upon myself to create something by myself and just put it out there about something I was passionate about, I would suggest to anybody, if there's a story that's bubbling up inside you, you got the fire and passion for it, go for it. Why not? Because the world is yours, and there isn't a better time with the advent of the internet and everything being out there. You can absolutely do it.
I love hearing people with passion. I do. I love talking to people that are passionate about the things that they're doing. It's, we all are mildly passionate about the things that we do. So seeing someone that has actual passion is fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Dawson.
Okay, cool. So we'll just do a couple here. I did a different podcast for a while. We did some lightning round questions just to get to know people outside of the normal promotional stuff. So feel free to answer any of these. The first thing that comes to your mind, I'll go quick. Steve, would you rather have a cat's body but a dog's brain, or a dog's body but a cat brain?
Well, I guess I'd have a cat's brain with a dog's body, because a dog, you got that big old sock holding your pink thing, and sometimes that can be demonstrative. And then I'm more of a cat anyways, because I kind of keep to myself. So yeah, I'd say a cat's brain with the dog's body. That's a crazy question.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, so here's another one I like to ask. So if you could think of 3 statistics that you'd want to know about your life, what would you want to know? Things like I've walked how many miles of my life, or how many breaths I've taken in, or whatever you could think of.
I would want to know how many gallons of Jameson I've taken into my body the last 20 years. I want to know how many times I've eaten at McDonald's since I was a young boy. And I would want to know how many people, when they say I know you from somewhere, really know me from my stand-up, or they truly think I worked at Geek Squad. So it's it's all good.
Oh, shit.
Another one, house phone. You still have a house phone?
I'm staying with my folks right now because I left California until my home is done in Tennessee. So yeah,
I was like, house phone, interesting.
And the phone has not rang all day, by the way, until now.
Perfect. I just thought it was funny. All right, 2 more. If you had to lose, well, you could keep half of your hair or half of your teeth. You got to lose the other one.
Oh God, well, I'd want to keep my teeth, because the thick hair you could always throw a hat on, but if you're missing your teeth, you might as well just move to West Virginia. Yeah. Teeth, okay, for sure.
Fair.
Perfect. Another fun one. Would you want to become half of your current height or double your current age?
Well, getting older sucks.
It does. Yeah. I'm learning that.
Yeah, I would definitely put on the pounds. That's okay. I'd put on the pounds.
Okay.
I eat better anyway, so that's fine.
Biggest pet peeve.
Biggest pet peeve. I hate, and my wife's over there, she'll look at me and nod when I say this, but I hate when people waste my time. When you're at the bank and someone is just taking their time and they got 1,000 questions and oblivious that anybody else is behind them. it drives me crazy when I go to a store, when I'm in line and I know there's people behind me. I have my cards ready. Boom, I'm done. I don't want, the survey. Goodbye. Thank you very much. I don't like holding people up. I don't like my time wasted. It's something that unfortunately does happen to me quite often. If I go to a bank, there will be a line of 12 people in line. And by the time I get to the front, there will be nobody behind me. And that happens to me nonstop. I don't understand it. The universe I live in, it just swings. If I just left 5 minutes later, I'd have no line. But every time I go there, there's always a line.
Well, the good thing is, once this is done, I'm going to send you a survey to see how this podcast went. No. I was so scared when you started saying, like, when people waste my time, I'm like, oh, God, you guys are talking about us.
No, I did a friend of mine. He's another great comic. He has a podcast. He said, I'll never forget this. He goes, show up at my house at noon. We start exactly at noon. I go, okay. So I show up at noon. I'm like, this is great. I'm going to be in and out. He answers the door in like mesh shorts and a tank top. His hair is all messed up. And the first thing he says is, hey, you're not in a rush, are you? And I was like, motherfucker. God damn it. It took him 45 minutes to set up the cables and everything. I'm like, oh, God.
That happens to us on a weekly basis. It feels like something goes wrong every time.
Yeah. It's mostly technology. It's because like Discord or Skype or something has an update, and it's just like one thing leads to another.
That's right. Well, that's what happens when you get your Wi-Fi from Starbucks, guys. Come on.
Well, Steve Dawson said that he would give it an 8. I'm going to say I would give it a 9.
Said 9.
You said you would give it a 9? Okay, I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to give it a 9.5, mostly because I'm a kiss ass and I want to be your favorite.
Mr. One-Upper.
So, but no, it's a fantastic film. Everyone should go see. Get on your couch, pull up your favorite streaming app, and rent the opening act. Steve, anything else you want to plug before you get out of here to our hundreds and hundreds of fans?
If you enjoyed the film, I would suggest Always Amazing. It's on YouTube. My good friend Bill Burr put it up on his channel, and it's just a really, really great, heartwarming story about a fraternal relationship, and I'm proud to have told it. The response has been very positive, and the amazing Jonathan. Nonetheless, all these years later, still his jokes are still relevant, and they're evergreen, and it's a lot of fun. And I got to go to David Copperfield's house and interview him, and it's the nicest house I've ever been in. The guy looks rich. You know what I mean? He makes you want to sue your parents. He's just unbelievable. But that's what I would say. But I got to tell you guys, it was a total blast doing this. I'm really glad. I happened to be checking my Twitter at that time and saw this works out maybe before the debate. That'd be a lot of fun. And if I'm ever in your area, I think Minnesota. Are you guys all in Minnesota?
No.
I'm in Boston.
And I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. So
beautiful. There's clubs in all those places. I'll be hitting all those in 2021. Just DM me and I'll get you guys tickets to the show.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Is incredible. Thank you so much for coming on, Steve. Let's go watch the debate and try to.
Yeah.
Just try to keep your hair together.
Absolutely crazy days, but I think that's the good thing about this film is that we could all use a laugh these days, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
You don't need to follow me. You don't need to follow anybody.
But you can follow us. I'm Brent, and I am
X, not Malcolm.
And he's Rob, and he's
Rob 1.
There's also Reggie, who is
Hit dog.
We can't forget about Dawson at
Andy
_.
Dawson.
Don't forget to follow the podcast at CinemaChatPod on Twitter. And check out our website, cinemachatpodcast.podbean.com.
I'm following you now. I'm just going to follow you everywhere. I'm just going to follow you the rest of my life.
Thanks, Peter. Now, if the rest of you would get off your ass and follow us, that would be great.
Mail, motherfucker.
Oh, and don't forget to send your emails to cinemachatpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Please, send us something. Have a good week, everyone. Goodbye.